All right, everybody, welcome to the Sam Hunter Podcast. Today we have got Steven Moody, fresh off a season where he just killed a 170-inch Alabama stud. So, Steven, if you would, just kind of introduce yourself to us, tell us a little bit about you, how you got into hunting, and what's your general style of hunting.
Well, I'm Steven Moody. I'm from Winston County, Alabama, up in North Alabama. We're about 60 miles north of Birmingham. I got into hunting whenever I was very young. My dad had carried me on one of my first hunting trips when I was 5 or 6 years old and carried me and put me in a sleeping bag so I'd stay warm. It's been a lifelong thing for me. Started out hunting whitetail here in Alabama. I was in the United States Air Force stationed in Alaska for 4 years active duty. And while up there, of course, I bear hunted and caribou hunted and moose hunted and was lucky enough to kill a bear and a caribou with my bow. So from there, I got into archery really big. And when I moved back home, had taken several decent deer with a bow. Never anything of this caliber, but grew up in the woods here in the Bankhead National Forest. It's 90-something thousand acres. My parents live right on the edge of it. I live basically right on the edge of it as well. But it's hard hunting. It's hills and hollows, and it's not for the faint of heart. Most of the time you have to travel in pretty deep to hunt and kill bigger deer. But me and my son, we stay in the woods fishing. My son and my daughter, we stay in the woods hunting, fishing, anything that we can do outdoors. So it's every year we're ready for deer season, ready for turkey season, ready to go catch big catfish. So it's part of our life. We're just simple country folks here. We don't make a whole lot of money, so we try to put up deer meat and vegetables and stuff like that to live off throughout the years. So it's a big part of our life.
That's awesome, man. You sent me a picture before we started this of some of the other bucks you'd gotten in the area in the past, and those are great bucks as well. If you would, I don't know if you scored those or not, but generally, what kind of bucks were you getting before this big one? They were all big, but before this 170, generally, what were the scores? Were you using a lot of the same methods, or what was your primary method when hunting those, earlier bucks that you've gotten?
The methods that I've always used is just basic stalk hunting. But this will be pretty lengthy. When I first started, we stalk hunted from the ground. That's the way my dad taught me. He's never been a climber. So I got into hunting out of climbers for archery purposes, of course, and then killed several smaller bucks with my bow. Nothing over 107, 110 inches, nothing near as big as what the deer that I killed on December 13th was. Three of the deer that I sent you pictures of are in the 120 to 130 range. The three that I sent you a picture of. Two of those actually came from the same exact area where the big deer was killed. That's why that I hunt that area. There's some agricultural fields and stuff like that around there as far as hay fields. I say agricultural, they're more hay fields. There's not soybeans and cornfields and stuff like that around here. So during the summer, we'll travel the back roads and look and see if we see any really big deer. And one of the deer that I sent you the picture of, we had actually seen it in the summer 2 years ago before season had started, so we knew there was good deer in the area this year. So my son and I had waited, and it was pure luck on that deer. We'll get to that later if you choose to. But we stalk hunt from the ground. My son's 11 years old, so I'm not ready for him to climb yet. I'm going to wait till he's 13 or 14 before I start letting him climb. So we hunt from the ground. Now, we are scent conscious. We play the wind. We try to make sure that whenever we hunt an area, the wind's going to be in our favor. The location where that I killed those deer and I killed this deer, I'm very fortunate. There's county roads on the north and south side. So if it's a north wind, I can come in off the south side. If it's a south wind, I can come in off the north side and pretty much keep the wind pretty well in my favor. So we try to be as scent conscious as we can. We wash our clothes and scent away. We try to do things right as much as you can with a child and hunting on the ground when it's two of you. That can be tough, but we've been pretty successful about it.
Absolutely, yeah. I've recently been taking my kids more and more, and it's fun. It definitely presents a lot of challenges, like you said, and we've been trying to get more scent conscious as well. Now, just curious, this just came to me, but I've been hearing more and more about Ozonics lately. I've never even tried that. You've done all the scentless spray, wash stuff in scentless, detergent, all the stuff, but have you ever tried that by any chance?
I have, and it's funny you mentioned that. I did not send you a picture of a deer I killed 3 years ago. I killed a 140 inch with a rifle also, but I didn't kill him on forest land. It was on a lease that we had up in Natural Bridge, which is about 25 miles from where I live. But I had a lot of trail camera footage of this deer, and I stuck with him, made sure the wind was right when I went in and stuck with him. And I bought one of the small Ozonic systems and put it in my blind with me. I killed him from a ground blind. And that deer came in downwind of me trying to smell me. and went through the thicket beside me, and I could hear his antlers as he was going through the thicket, and then come out down inside the field and gave me a good shot at him. But
Wow.
he scored 140.
That's pretty good. So, with your experience, it seems to work pretty well then.
It's nothing's foolproof.
Right.
You can go out one day and you can have everything that you think is just perfect as far as
Yep.
scent, and an old doe will bust you, or a buck, a bigger buck will bust you, a little buck will bust you, and then you can have times. I've had times where that I've been hunting in tree stands and not been as conscious, and deer walk right underneath you, and not even pay attention
Yep.
to you. So I think it's a lot what's going on with them in their life, if they've been boogered, if they've been spooked, if the rut's going on. It's a number of things. But at that point and that moment in time, I think that Ozonics did help me kill that 100.
Wow. Well, that's good to know. I've been hearing a lot of good things about it. It's something that, I've been considering getting in the game this year, trying Ozonics out, just seeing how it goes. But my best buck I got this year, opening day of Georgia Bow, and I'll send it to you after this, but it's kind of in the class with, the other three you had sent me, more in that range. I haven't had the pleasure of getting, 170. I can't wait for people to see this deer. It's incredible. But for that deer, the win was just perfect. I did go absolutely insane on the scentless stuff. I probably used more than I should have and just went completely ridiculous with it. And I don't even know that I needed to because the wind just happened to be right in my face the whole time.
Right.
One buck that was a pretty good one even came 5 yards from, I was in the ground blind, 5 yards from the ground blind, sniffing, putting his head up. And when that happened, I knew, okay, I'm in a good situation here. And then the
Right.
bigger one followed him in. But a lot of times in that spot, for instance, I've got, a few spots, but that one, the wind is usually not in my favor. So Ozonics, I've been looking more into just to see what I can get away with there. But
Yeah, definitely.
kind of, yeah, kind
That's
of moving it.
with me. I just on a whim, I was like, you know what? I try to play scent, but they offer the smaller ozonic systems for like
Right,
blinds and stuff like that. And I got one of them just checking it out, and I did. I seen deer, but I can't say that it helped. Other than that one day, I know it helped because that deer,
right.
that mature buck, he came from behind me and crossed the walking trail where we come in at, and then come down beside the field and then come out at the bottom of the field. It was definitely, I know that it had to have some effect on that scenario that day.
Absolutely. And, moving into this monster that you got this year, this 170-inch Alabama buck. And actually, before we even, I was kind of looking into when you'd said where you'd hunted. Um, I've got some family in Alabama. And so we actually go up there a lot. We've got good friends in Tennessee. They're right over the line from Alabama. So we're in that area a lot.
Yes, sir.
And I've got a lot of family in Florence, Alabama, which from what I was putting together might be only like an hour or so from you. Have you been
Yes,
there
sir.
before?
Yep. We go to Florence often.
Oh, wow.
The town that I grow up in where that I live, is about 1,500 people. So the largest city in Winston County is about 5 or 6 thousand people. So if you want to go out to eat somewhere nice or something like that, go to the movies, go shopping, we go to Florence a lot. So I'm very familiar with Florence.
Wow, small world, man. That's
Yes,
pretty
sir.
awesome. Yeah, I've got some, cousins, aunts and uncles up there, and there's been some places I've been tempted to do some hunting over there because there's some sanctuaries where you can't really hunt, but some of my family lives right on the border of these sanctuaries,
Yes, sir.
and there's creeks, and I'm just like, it's been turning my brain the last couple of years that, man, that might be a good spot to go to. But yeah, going into this 170 you just got, I think this is awesome. You told us a little bit about your tactics. I know from what I read about your situation. I know it came out in was it Whitetail magazine or what was the?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Breaking
yeah.
news, Bucks and Whitetail magazine. Yes, sir. North
Yeah,
American
I know.
Whitetail.
I read in one of those that you tried a little something different on this hunt, which I love this, and I want to hear a lot more about this, and I know our listeners will because rattling is one of those things where I've had people who have hunted their whole lives and they've killed some pretty big bucks in my area, and they tell me do not rattle. I've obviously seen tons of videos and footage where people have killed monsters on rattling, and you just get information all over the place. So, I want to know for you, one, what caused you to change things up for this hunt? Start to rattle. How did you sort of prepare for that? What did you watch? What did you look up? What were the tactics? How do you think it overall played into your hunt that day? And with that, you can kind of run straight into the walkthrough of your hunt. But just as a precursor, I think we really want to know how rattling played into that.
Yes, sir. Well, my son actually got me into rattling. He's like, Dad, let's try rattling. And I'm like, son, I don't know anything about that. I was like, if you want us to try rattling, I said, we'll look at it, but you're going to have to do some research and learn yourself. So I had to work on a Saturday, and he'd stayed with my parents, and they went shopping up in Muscle Shoals, which is just right outside of Florence. and he come back with a black rattling system.
Okay.
So we waited. We went and hunted the first 2 weekends, which season opens, rifle season is usually around the second weekend in November here. And the deer start rutting here earlier in Bankhead, in the management area. So you've got Bankhead National Forest, which encompasses Winston, Walker, and parts of Coleman County, I believe, and Lawrence County. So Bankhead National Forest, it's also got the Sipsey Wilderness area and the Black Warrior Wildlife Management area. And in the Black Warrior Wildlife Management area, the deer start rutting earlier than what they will on the south end of the Bankhead. So by the third weekend of rifle season, we got the rattling antlers, we carried them out. We went to an area that was probably about 1,000 yards as the crow flies from where I killed the Friday the 13th deer. So we went in that morning, got set up right at daylight or just before, get set up. Soon as it gets daylight to where that we can see good, I just barely tickle the antlers together and grunt a few times. Well, I pick my phone up and I start looking at my phone, playing a game or whatever. And my son says, "Daddy, big buck." And so I won't let him shoot until I look at a deer. And I look it up and find the deer, and it's down. At that time, there's still several green leaves on the trees. So it's kind of, you have to pay attention. You have to look. Deer can come in and get away from you really quick. So I look up, find the deer, and it's an old, mature deer that's got a palmated antler on one side. And I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, that's a good deer. Let's shoot it." And within just those few seconds, that deer had worked through the thicket and got into some thicker stuff, and we never got a shot at it. So that was my first attempt at rattling. And we've rattled in a old, mature deer. Now, he's not going to score nothing like this deer did, but he was a big deer. He would have been a great deer for this area in Alabama. So that gets us fired up. We're thinking, well, that's pretty cool. So we go back into the same spot. And this morning, we'd set up on a big ridge. And I set up on that big ridge because we're overwatching a creek bottom where there's 2 deer crossings at. So we're watching those deer crossings, and I was in the mindset of get up high. Well, this ridge is just covered in rocks and not very thick. I mean, it's relatively thin in oak trees, poplar trees, red oaks, white oaks, just stuff like that. So we stuck out like a sore thumb. That deer come in, pinpointed us before we could get a shot at it, and then got back in the thicket and left, and we didn't see him again the rest of the year. So that was our first scenario with rattling. So the next time we come in, I'm like, we're going to get down in the bottoms. We'll rattle again and be where that we've got more cover. Well, we go in the same thing. I don't get real aggressive with the rattling antlers. I go in, we get set up, rattle a little bit, grunt a little bit, and then within 10 or 15 minutes, the spike nearly runs over us. Runs up 15, 20 yards and stops. Wow. And then he's picking us out and trying to figure out where the deer fight's at. Picks us out, runs off. So then we're getting a little bit more excited about the rattling. So fast forward with work and everything like everybody else, we don't get a whole lot of time to hunt. Typically, the rut really kicks off the last week of November, the first 2 weeks of December, around in that time. So I was off on a Thursday afternoon and had the opportunity to go in where I killed this deer at and hunt. Have hunted it several times, see a lot of deer usually. It's not very often if you go there on a good wind that you don't see something. So it's a really good area, and it's an area that people drive by every day that nobody really pays attention to. It's just a small block of national forest land that has private and leased land on either side of it. So I went in that evening. I did not rattle. I didn't grunt. I used my can call a few times, the Primos can call. Used it a few times, and then I had a deer right at dark, right at the end of shooting light, come out of the thicket, the bedding area, and come down to the bottom of the ridge. And I was up higher than what I was the next morning when I killed the deer. That deer came out and went to the bottom of the ridge and stopped, and I could not see him from there. But he would not move, and it made me think that it was probably a buck, probably a decent buck. So I sneak out as quiet as I can, get out, and then the next morning I'm going to be able to hunt again. So went home, cleaned, washed all my clothes, got everything ready. Got up the next morning, got there at daylight, walked in. I say daylight, I'm talking, it was dark when I walked in. I was set up and ready whenever it was shooting light. Got in, got set down. The first hour came by, didn't really hear anything, didn't see anything. So I had talked to an older hunter, and he had told me, he said, sometimes I get really aggressive with the rattling antlers. He said, people will think I'm crazy. He said, I'll bang bushes and rake the ground and stomp the ground. And me hunting from the ground that morning, that's what I decided to do. And I'd slam the antlers together probably for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, raking on bushes and trees and stomping the ground. And that morning, I got ahead of myself a little bit. I went down the ridge, down closer to the bottom of the holler where that deer had come in, the night
Right.
before so that I could see off down in the bottoms and make sure that didn't happen again. I got everything set down after the rattling sequence, got everything set down, got myself comfortable, and was just watching, and I could hear a deer running. And the deer was running. I was on a southwest wind, which was blowing. If you and I are looking at each other, it was blowing towards my left, which would have carried the wind across to the ridge where the deer was coming from. So he come up, and when he come over the hill, I was hunting with a 308. I've got a AR platform 308 with a loophole scope, and that's what I was hunting with. He comes over the hill. I glimpse at him in the scope, and I noticed that he's a shooter for here. You know, he's a 120, 130 inch deer is what I'm thinking. He comes up and stops before he gets to where that he would be downwind of me, and he was 70 yards broadsided. So I fire around, bust him. He turns and runs straight down the hill towards me. And when he's running down the hills towards me, I'm like, holy crap, I've just shot a giant. You know,
Yeah.
really at that time, I was like, I've just shot a big deer. And I'm thinking,
Right.
then I'm thinking, 150s. I'm like, wow, I've probably killed a 150-inch deer. Well, he goes down, and when he goes down, he goes to raise back up, and I shot him again. I was like, I'm not taking a chance. I'm going to shoot that sucker again. He falls, he expires. I walk down to him, and when I walk down to him and pick him up, I'm like, I cannot believe this just happened. And I'm a man of faith, and without Jesus Christ, I wouldn't be here today. So the first thing I did was drop to a knee and give thanks to God, because I knew that I had just killed something very special. And then when I start looking at him, I'm like, wow, this deer might go 160, 165. So at that time, I called one of my real good lifelong friends, and I was like, man, I've just killed a really big deer, and told him where I was at, and I was like, can you come help me get it out? And he's like, yeah, I'll come over. And I got to call my dad too. I was like, Dad, I've killed a really big deer. If you get a chance, can you come help me? And he's like, yeah, I'm in Double Springs. I'll be there in a few minutes. My dad and my friend come and help me get him pulled out. And then, of course, I made a post on Facebook, and the people knows that I've killed some decent deer over my lifetime. And when I say a big buck down, typically people realize it's going to be a decent deer. So I said that on Facebook, and then just in a few minutes, everybody's wanting to know, where's it at? Well, can we see it? And of course, I took a picture with it. The picture everybody's seen with me in camo and everything. Took that picture and posted it, and then it just blew up from there. And we got the deer out. It only took about 30 or 35 minutes to get it out. That day, I had said earlier, typically here you have to go pretty deep, because the majority of everybody, they get right off the side of the road. They'll find a place, and if you ever get to come this way, holler at me, and if it's where that I can, man, I'll take you and show you. It's really unique, because you'll drive down past my parents' house, and when you get past the last house here, there's anywhere around you for 10 miles through the woods. It's big woods, really big woods.
Yeah.
So that morning, and where that particular setup, it's not 300 yards off the road. And the way that the deer travel there, and I've been fortunate. I don't think that it's any type of skill or any special talent, anything like that. I give all thanks to God for me killing this deer. But knowing kind of how the deer move in that area, and knowing when to go in from the north or from the south, it plays a part in it. And so just knowing how that the deer travel in that area, I wasn't 300 yards off the road. I wasn't very far at all. So I parked my truck in the parking spot. I walk off of a big long ridge down to the bottom, and the deer feed on either side of you on the ridges. There's a big thicket on the left. It's an old cutover, and the deer bed there typically. But they'll travel those two ridges a lot in the mornings and in the evenings. So that's the reason that I was down in there. But once we got him out and carried him uptown, man, the whole world set on fire. It's been very surreal. You get a lot of publicity, and just the old country boy, I ain't used to nothing like that. So it's been a really, really, really neat situation.
Man, that's awesome. And there's a lot to unpack there. I love that, your faith, and that you were thanking God immediately for that. I do a lot of praying in the deer stand and in the
Yes,
blinds.
sir.
That's a lot of it comes into play there, and definitely lots of thankfulness and praying, and just praising God. When you're successful in those moments. So I love that. And then as far as you may have touched on this, but as far as that deer in particular, had there been any rumors? Had you heard anything that there's a really extra? I mean, there's a monster in this area, or did you just? It was just. I know you said like at first you thought maybe 125, 130. Was there
Yeah.
anything in the back of your mind? Had people been talking a little bit?
Well, I say about my style of hunting. When we go in and when we ground hunt, it gives you an opportunity, if you are scent conscious and you pay attention to what the deer do, and you find trails and you travel corridors and stuff like that, you can look for big deer sign. I know that I'm not in there stomping around in my tennis shoes that I've worked in all day, and I'm not putting as much scent down as what's going to spook the deer, I don't think. So We typically look for big deer sign when we're in the woods and when we're hunting. We don't do. I put out a few cameras, but I don't put out a whole lot. There was a deer. I'll send you a picture of it. It's probably about a half a mile from where that I killed this deer at. At the end of season last year, there's a big hayfield there, and I was traveling by late in the evening, and there was a really big deer on the backside of that field. And I took a picture of him with my phone. It was about 200 or 300 yards away, and I'll send you the picture of it. You can see it's a really special deer, and I think that is this deer.
Oh, okay.
So I knew that there was a really big deer in the area, and I had not heard about anybody killing him. Now, it's very unique because the management area, which connects to all the forest land that I hunt, they'll only have 4, 5, 6 rifle hunts per each side. They have an A side and a B side for each side each year, and there's really big deer in there. A guy that I did a interview with, Michael Perry, killed a 190 something inch or 180 something inch non-typical with a muzzleloader a few years ago. And then I've got a friend, Tony Myers. Tony killed He's killed 180s, 190s. He held the state record for muzzleloader for several years. So
Wow.
all these big deer are in here. They're usually just inaccessible if you're not willing to get out and work for them. Anytime that you step in the woods around the locations where I hunt, you have the opportunity to see something special. If you are lucky, for one, I think that there's a lot of luck involved in hunting. And you're patient. You don't shoot every. If you want to shoot a spike, shoot a spike. That's your God given right. You do that. And I've shot spikes. I've shot 4 points. I've shot 6 points. I've shot 10 points. So if you're willing to wait, though, sometimes something special will happen. But to directly answer your question, I was not aware that anybody had spoke of a deer of this caliber in the last year or so being seen in that area. A few years back, there was some talk of a really big deer that was in that area that never got killed, as far as I know. But I don't believe it. This is him because he was about 5.5 or 6, and that deer would have been way on the decline if we'd have seen that
Yeah.
deer. So we had seen 2 years prior, traveling the back roads, the back county roads, we had seen a really good deer that the genetics are there, and it keeps it. I know that if I go in the woods there and I do the things that I'm supposed to, potentially I'll have the opportunity to kill a decent deer. Now, there's a lot of private land that's, if you're traveling on the county road, I'm referring to. If you're traveling, it would be on the east side. It's more private property, and those folks, they do manage the deer herd, and they don't shoot just anything. And they actually, someone had sent me a photo of this deer prior to season, before he had broke his drop tine off. So they were aware of him. They just wouldn't let anybody know about it. There's big deers like turkey. You don't tell everybody where you're hearing turkey gobble at. So
Oh,
that's kind of where it was at on that. We knew that there's big deer in the area. We'd seen the big old palmated deer, and all actuality, I was hoping to kill that big palmated deer. That's number one on my list. The cameras are going in here in a few weeks to try to hopefully that he made it through another year, that we can get him on camera and put a game plan for him, because he's going to be special. He'll score a little bit, but he's just an old deer. And to me now, at this stage of my life, if I can kill older deer and get successful and be successful at taking mature deer, I'm more excited about that than anything. And of course, having a child, they're the ones that get to shoot anyway when they're with us. So that's kind of where we're at on that.
that's awesome. And in a second, we're going to see this deer. But before we do, a lot. I love that you got this deer on public land, because anyone who has hunted for any amount of time knows that is an incredibly tough challenge to do that. I mean, just to kill a big whitetail this day and age, whether you're hunting public, private, it's a tough challenge. But when you do that on public, it really raises some eyebrows. And you've shown consistently in the area you're in, you've been able to get really mature, good bucks. But taking this thing on public, and the fact that you've had lots of success on public, for people who are just getting into that, or I'll admit, I've done a lot of my hunting on private, and there are some public places I've gone to. For me, I've done better with ducks, finding them on public, which is a different kind of challenge, but I've done well with that. As far as deer, turkey, I've done a lot better with those, I'll admit, on private. For you and, people getting into public land hunting, when you're walking into a branch of woods, let's say you came to Georgia, you went to one of the public lands I hunted, I know you would know, you'd figure out where to go. But for people listening, what would you start with? Some people go with rubs, scrapes. There's different things. What is the first thing that comes to your mind? Maybe in the habitat, maybe in what you're looking for, and just kind of build on that for people.
I feel like a lot of the hunting success here is based on the acorn crop. because there's not the agricultural fields. There's not. I'm trying to think of what a deer corridor where that it's just a narrow strip of woods that separates 200-acre fields where that the deer have to travel. You take that same concept. The deer is like any other creature. It's going to take the path of least resistance most always. It's to me. I'm going to for number one is I want to know what the deer are eating. Are they eating acorns? Are they eating honeysuckle? Is there any type of old fruit trees, or I say fruit trees, persimmon trees? I don't know if y'all have a whole lot of those on public land in Georgia, but here, if you can find a persimmon tree during bow season, chances are you're going to do good. You may not kill that huge buck because most persimmon trees are usually around a house place, which is not really far off in the woods, But
Right.
muscadine vines, anything like that that drops, that's sweet, that a deer's going to like, that's what I'm going to look for. I love hunting creek bottoms. I love getting on creeks and trying to find creek crossings because the deer typically will cross at the same place year after year after year as long as hunting pressure or hiking is a big deal here in Bankhead. People lose a lot of hikers, and I think that plays into effect the way that the deer move. If you've got a trail where that people are beating out and they're going to see something specific in the national forest, and there's a lot of human traffic there, I don't think the bigger mature deer are going to use those same corridors. So you have to get out and look and find them. So that's kind of what I do is try to find. If you got a big old white oak tree that's dropping a bunch of acorns early on in season, me and my son's going to be pretty close to that white oak tree early on in season because sometimes it's harder to find the bedding areas in Bankhead. We've got 96,000 acres that a deer can roam on. Is he going to bed in the same place every day? A mature buck might, but it may be an old cutover that's way out in the middle of the woods, hadn't nobody seen in 10 years. That happens some, but a lot of times, it's just big open hardwoods and the deer can go anywhere they want to. They don't have to have a specific route or they don't have a narrow corridor to walk to travel for covers. My big thing is I like creek bottoms. I like finding creek crossings and trying to find the food source. If you can find the food source, you can see deer. And to me, that's half the battle. Once you can see the deer and understand what they're doing, then you can adjust your game plan and try to figure out where that you're going to go from there to try to be more successful.
Absolutely, and I love that you brought up persimmons. Here in Georgia, we can bait, kind of do whatever. So I remember there was actually an old podcast we did a long time ago where a neighbor who I didn't know at the time, now we're good friends. We've gone hunting together. He's taken me to his hunting clubs, every year since this happened. But there was a pretty big buck that had ended up on my trail camera. I posted it at the time. I wouldn't do this anymore, but at the time I'd posted it in a Georgia Facebook group. And I forget what I even said, but somebody commented and said, I know that buck. I had him in my yard 3 days ago. And so we connected and now we're good friends. But
Right.
he lived over a mile down the road, and he told me what he always, whenever he put persimmon down, any kind of persimmon crush or persimmon whatever, that deer was there. And so I, tested that out and once I started putting persimmon down, I had a lot of new faces in the area. So that's definitely something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. I hear a lot about different, food plots and what you can plant there, but not a lot of people have brought up persimmon. But it does seem like, and the few people I know that have brought it up, it definitely brings out some pretty big bucks to that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. Kind of moving into, I know people want to see this buck, and honestly, I'm dying to see it again. So if you would just show off that buck, and I know you said you got the score sheet with you, and just kind of show people this monster Alabama buck you've got there.
Yeah, I got in a hurry when I got off work. I didn't grab my score sheet, so I'd have to look
Oh, I
on my
got you, no
phone. I
worries.
may be able to, but he
Yeah,
scored 170 and 2/8. The G2s or G3s are, I think, 11 and 4/8, something like that. And I think one of them is 12. It's a mainframe 10. Here, he had about a 4-inch drop time. That would have been amazing if I could have taken him with that. But
yeah,
fighting, I'm sure that it got broke off. But got two neat little kickers over here that come off of his G2 and G3. It was very neat. A master scorer, Larry, I can't remember Larry's last name, but when he scored these, it was pretty neat because they're the exact same length. And I thought that was
wow,
neat. Most of the time, kickers and stuff like that, they're not the same length. So,
right.
but yeah, that's him. He's a. It was so surreal to look at him when I get home, and I look at the other deer on my wall, and then I look back at him or look at pictures of him. I'm like, wow, that is truly something special. I'll probably never kill another deer of this caliber here on public land. That they're there, and if God blesses me with the health and the ability to continue doing like I've been doing, maybe I'll get to, but the chances are very slim. I'm going to have to go somewhere out west and try
Right.
to hunt out there before I do anything like that, I'm sure.
Yeah. That is an absolute monster, beautiful deer. And what's kind of your plans with it? Because I know I've got some friends who, um, they they really prefer, and I'm kind of in the middle. I love both, but I have some friends who are diehard Euromount people, and they don't even want. It doesn't matter. They could go kill a 200 inch tomorrow. They would not shoulder mount this deer. They want it Euroed. And then I've got friends who are the opposite. I'm kind of in the middle. I like a mix of both. But for you, what's your plans with him? Are you kind of going to leave him in that stage, shoulder mount him? What's kind of the idea there?
His cape is at Mike Miller's with Miller's Taxidermy over in Coleman County. That he's the one that does my taxidermy work. His cape's there. The only reason that I had him in, I entered him in a big buck contest here locally. One of the food processors have one each year, so I entered him in that, and I had him. And then you and I had spoke, and I told you that I was okay with doing a podcast with you. And so I've really kept him around so that we could get together so that y'all could see him again. And then as soon as this weekend gets here, I'll carry him back and get his mount finished. And then I'm going to enter him in the Buckmasters Indoor World Championship deal that they do each year down at Birmingham. That's the archery part of it, but it's the Deer Expo that they do each year. I'll enter him in that and let everybody see him then, and then he'll be at my house then from then on till the good Lord calls me home, I guess, and one of the kids decide if they're going to keep him or not. So, but that's my plans on him. I'm a shoulder mount guy. I like some of the Euro mounts, but I like more to. It means more to me to look at the complete animal up on my wall, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to close with, a little bit about rattling. A side thought just came to my head. Recently, I was listening to some different things and reading some things about, when people get a really big buck, sometimes it, depends on a lot of situations, but, they can start getting offers from, the local sporting store. If you're in a bigger area, even if you're not, like Bass Pro, Cabela's, people make offers. Sometimes they throw in a replica, they'll pay you to get your mount. I know there's some collectors that have some interesting stuff coming out right now that there's people that have a ridiculous collection and they just go all out, and their life's goal is just to collect the biggest bucks they can. And so for you, just being in the situation where you just got this big buck, it's so sentimental to you. I've played the game in my mind. Some people do. And for me, I know I'd want to keep it. But obviously, you don't. Usually, these situations are kind of hush hush, like they don't want you to disclose how much they offered you. So you never really get to learn too much about, unless it goes through. And sometimes they didn't put that deal through. But there's only a few where we can actually know how much did Bass Pro pay for this, how much did so and so pay. But let's say, I won't say any names, but there's a couple really big deer collectors out right now. If one of them were to come to you and made you some kind of offer, and let's say it was a little more than you were thinking, do you already kind of know, like, I'm not letting go of this thing? Or if they threw in a replica and bought it, would you kind of entertain that idea? What's kind of your thought process on that?
God bless me with this animal. If somebody offered me an amount that would make a difference on helping me to be able to give my kids something that they've wanted for years, I would do it in a heartbeat if I could get a replica. I've been through a lot in my life, and I have three kids, and I'm a single father, and it's life can be a struggle sometimes. So if there was a offer that was given to me to where the whole world or other people could enjoy him, as long as I got a replica back, I would do it in a heartbeat, and I wouldn't blame anybody else if they did. Some people may think that that's bad of me, that I would just be chasing money, but it's not the fact of chasing money. It's the fact of if somebody offers you something, it's okay to ask for help in life. So all of us need help. And if somebody offered me a large amount of money for something that God gave me and I got to experience, and I'll keep that in my memories forever, I would do it in a heartbeat if it made a difference in helping my kids to get more or be able to go do something that they've wanted to do. Whether it be, I might be able to take my kids on a guided hunt, or I might be able to take them on a guided fishing trip or something like that with that money. So to me, that's just God's way of blessing me more than one time. He blessed me with the animal, that he's going to bless me with an opportunity to be able to better provide for my children.
Yeah, honestly, I love that answer. I think that's a pretty good, that makes complete sense. I have kids of my own, so I definitely understand that. And, it's just one of those things where, especially sometimes, like lately, they throw in the replica too, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
for those deals. And that definitely helps out because you don't want to, there's something about when you look at your mounts on the wall and it takes you back right to that moment. Like you can see it, you can almost feel it. I get goosebumps sometimes, look whether it's ducks, turkey tails, anything. I mean, it takes me back to that moment. So I think the replica would definitely help with that. But I was
Yes.
just curious to pick your brain on that because I love hypotheticals. But Let's
Yeah.
kind of close out with rattling. And the reason I say this is, there's so many videos on rattling. I've done some myself, and I will say for me, so we have some family land a couple hours out in a much more, country area in the middle of nowhere, really big woods. And there, when I rattled, it's gotten a little crazier for whatever reason. It's, been younger bucks that come, but they come running. I mean, I've some of the craziest stampede type situations I've seen in the woods have been when I've rattled, and I do happen to have the black rack as well. Haven't had it, unfortunately, yet where I've rattled and a monster's coming out there. Now, I rattle in the area I'm in a lot, which is more, it's a mixture. There's some bigger woods, there's some suburban areas. It's kind of a mixture of city meets country. It's not city, but it's not country. It's right there in the middle. So there's some pockets where you can find some good stuff. But there are a lot of hunters in the area, and that's the reason that some of the hunting mentors I have in the area who have killed some really big stuff in our area specifically tell me chill out on the rattling a little bit because these bucks have heard it all in our area. Whereas if I go out to our family land out in the country, it's less likely they've heard it, which is probably why I've had a lot more action. And I know for you were hunting public land and you said it's really big woods. So that kind of lines up to what I've experienced, that the bigger woods it is, it seems like, if they haven't heard it, they may come running. But even when it comes to that, it's, you've figured out through doing it yourself and watching videos and studying it. It's not as easy as you just take some horns and just start, what were some of those main techniques you took away that really helped you from videos and stuff your son was showing you, or, got you into looking at, that you feel like if somebody's going to rattle, they should know these, couple main things here?
One, I say this kind of jokingly, stay tuned because the rattling is going to be a big part of hunting this year. And I've come up with some thoughts that I think that may make you more successful in rattling in the woods, in the terrain that we have here. So typically, the one thing that I learned from watching videos and such is they talk about the wind, that big bucks come in from downwind. Here in Alabama, northern Alabama, a deer can come in downwind from you and he's a ridge over and you never see him because of the terrain. So I think that a lot of times, like I say, I'm new at this, so this is just theory of mine. We had success early on because we were willing to try. We watch videos, give you a scenario that they'll show you what a rattling sequence is. It may just be light rattling early in season because they're not fired up, they're not ready to fight and kill each other, but they're getting ready. So it may pique their interest and get them to come in. That was for me, was just trying. I was being quiet and just learning to paw on the ground, trying to sound as much like a deer as what you can. To me, you think of it like kind of like you do turkey hunting. A lot of times when you get a gobbler to answer and to come in, it's not the best turkey sound that you've made when you're sitting at home or sitting on your back porch and boy, that sounds good. That sounds good to me. A lot of times, the old gobbler, he'll gobble to something that don't even sound as good as what you think it should, and it's not going to be a world championship call. So I think it's like that similar. Yes, there's other people out there trying to do the perfect rattling sequence. They're trying to do everything that they've studied on video. Think outside the box. Do something different. Try something different. That deer, it may pique that deer's interest because he's like, I've never heard that before. I've never witnessed that in the woods. I don't, that might be deer actually fighting, and then based off of that, then try to play the wind. The wind to me is everything. The deer that we interacted with that we know that rattling had some effect on this year, one was visual. The wind was right that morning. Whenever the palmated deer came in on my son and I, the wind was right. But my setup was totally wrong because I'm thinking get up here on this big tall ridge, and it nearly looks like a high wall. If you're familiar with high walls and stripping and stuff like that, it's nearly straight up, that ridge is. So get up on the side of that. Of course, you're wearing camo and you try to be as concealed as you can, but in reality, to a deer or a wild animal, you stick out like a sore thumb. And deer are similar to turkeys. If they hear you, they can pretty much pinpoint where that you're at. And then if you move or you make some type of sudden crazy jerk or fix your hat or fix your gun, that deer's going to see you probably before you see it. So I think set up as far as where that you're at, be as covered and be as concealed as you can with the ability to be able to scan the woods and see the woods. And then just, to me, I'm going to try stuff that everybody else is not trying. I'm sorry, my dad's doing construction inside the house.
Oh, no, you're good.
So, yeah, take the tips, watch your videos, watch all these guys that have made a living on hunting, the Primos guys, the Drury guys, we watch all those. My son and I, we if it's he and I, we sit around and watch hunting shows all the time. Listen to what they say, do what they say, but don't be scared to do something different. That's God bless me with the hunt of my life by doing something different. I listened to a hunter that's very successful and what he had told me. And I tried it for myself. And that day, at that time, at that moment, it paid off big time for me.
Absolutely. Well, Steven, thank you again so much for being on the show. I know listeners are going to love seeing this buck, hearing this incredible story because it's awesome how it all came together. And I hope you have much more continued success in the woods. I think we'll all be looking out this coming season. No pressure, just to see what's going on because it seems
Yes,
like you're
sir.
getting it, more and more dialed in as you go. So we'll be looking out for what's next. But appreciate you being on the show, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. It was really nice to meet you and talk with you. And we can't promise anything, but we got some things we're gonna try. So maybe the good Lord will bless us again.
Absolutely, man. Well, appreciate it again. Have a great day.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you. Bye bye.